Welcome to this podcast series of Eye on Guyana. I am Sharmin Prince, and with me I have.
David,
And before we continue, Neibert, I want you to ask you to start with a word of prayer.
Heavenly Father, we bless you and thank you. We honor you. We invite you in this place. We cover ourselves and everything and everyone connected to us in the whole armor of God, that we may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the ruler of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Therefore, we put on the whole armor of God that we may be able to withstand in the evil day. And having done all to stand, we stand having our loins girded about with truth. We put on the breastplate of righteousness, our feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, we take the shield of faith, with which we're able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And we take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication, and with perseverance we intercede for all the saints. We invite your presence here, Lord. Speak through us, minister through us, in the name and by the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. So thank you so much, Neibert. And here we are to discuss a crisis that is occurring in our country.
Amen.
Um, but right now, we need healing. Our nation need to know how to deal with this societal trauma. Um, and that's where I want us to start.
Okay. Yeah, it's a heart wrenching what's going on, what I've seen, really heart wrenching. And I had, like you, waterworks of tears coming down, just looking at the father, looking at the mother, looking at the family members, looking at the people insisting on that they're not moving from the hotel. I was looking today, I saw even the transportation of the body to the place where they're going to have the post-mortem. And I just saw the father's demeanor. You can tell that he loves his daughter. He loves his family. He loves his wife, his two sons. He just loves them. And this is a young girl that was absolutely loved by the people in her community and in her family. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to. I think it would not have been so hard for most people had there not been the lies told up front, right? People would have understood something happened to this young lady. Not, I shouldn't even say young lady, I should say a young girl, because she was just 11, right? Something happened to her. And but the lies that were told made it very, very hard to take. It feels as though something with the police force is against the people of Guyana, right? If you're in problems. So eh, what is going on now is really telling. I mean, that whole scene was telling. So I'm not surprised of the reaction, because now we have real proof, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I, for me, if the police were not compromised, maybe she would have been alive. The autopsy revealed that she died from drowning. I think that's what the last thing I heard. Now, for me, if she drowned it, how did they? Where did she drown? Did they examine the water in the lungs to know if it's in the pool or it was in a bathtub? Right? How I think I saw when they got her out of the water, there was cotton balls in her nose. Now, if she drowned it, How did those cotton balls get into her nose? Um, so there's so many, even now after the postmortem or the autopsy, there's still a lot of questions. And you mentioned the police. The police took an oath to serve and protect, and to serve and protect the vulnerable. In this case, the vulnerable was not protected. And now there is mistrust. And there is this. I'm sure there are police officers that are not compromised, that are honest. But now there is mistrust, a national mistrust, because they were trying to derail the family, get rid of the family, so that the perpetrators can get rid of the body.
Maybe it might be helpful if we go through the timeline to kind of like, let's see how egregious it looks, it looked and looks like. From what I heard is that this young girl went with her grandmother and other family members to
Mhm.
to this pool, and the pool is in the hotel, and apparently the hotel is fenced off, so you can't just walk into the hotel, apparently. Right, I don't know if that's what you heard too. Okay. So, and then I'm hearing from family members, they got there like 1:15 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
and then by 1:45, which is half an hour later, she's missing.
Missing.
Right, so half hour. Then the father said he gets there about 2 o'clock, maybe 2:15, and aunt said she got there at 3 o'clock. Family members were already there, and also she was with her grandmother. I don't know if I mentioned this. She's with
Mhm.
her grandmother and other family members, so
Mhm.
her grandmother was not the only one, right? So from that time, from 2 o'clock, they're asking to see this child from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can see how egregious it is if they get access to the building at 11 o'clock or 11:30 at night. Sun, sun is up from 2 o'clock, 3, 4, 5, right? The sun goes down, let's say about 6 o'clock in Guyana at this time of the year. So that's 4 years, 4 hours of sunlight, in addition to the police could have been there because they're not far away. Lock down the place. What kind of hotel that somebody's missing at and you can't lock down the place? The father said as he was standing there, it was business as usual. People just going about working like nothing is happening. And they're saying, my daughter's missing. My daughter's missing. So it's quite unusual, right? And then the next thing I heard of is I saw him talking and he said, it's 1:30 in the morning. We're not going home. Then he said, in that speech that he was talking at 1:30, you can see the police standing, guarding basically the entrance of the hotel. We're not leaving. You want us to leave? We're not leaving. Me and me and my girl, as he put it, me and my girl, we alone can't search this place, right? But then at one point, some other narrative, you heard that they allowed people to search some of the family members at about 11:30 or something like that, or close to 12 o'clock. But they said that when they searched, it was so the place was had so much stuff in it, they couldn't search, and the place is so big, they can't search. So why wasn't the police searching? Why didn't the police search? Why why did why was it allowed to have business as usual at this place? Yeah, those are questions. This is even before we get to we get to any other thing. Plus, there was a video that a Guyanese critic did that same night, probably like 8, 9, or something like that. And he showed the pool, and there was nothing in the pool. So even if because I didn't hear the autopsy report, what they said, right? But even if it shows that by she drowned, I think your questions are valid because she certainly didn't drown in that pool.
Exactly. And in the midst of all that you're saying, the family was told that someone saw her in a bus. That kind of tactic to distract the family, for them to leave. And one of the most powerful thing, I before I continue, I just think that the dad deserves the medal of the dad of the year. He said, and I am quoting him, it may not be verbatim. He said, I do not know to read and write, but my belly told me my daughter is in there. That level of intuition
Mhm.
and the wisdom to follow his gut is remarkable. He did not have the intellectual knowledge, the intellectual capabilities, and all that, but he followed his gut, his intuition, his discernment, and it was accurate and as straight as an arrow. And one of the things that I wanted to hear and I thought would have brought about some healing is an apology from the Guyana police force. We failed you. We failed Adriana. That kind of humility, um, think would have started the healing process, not just for the family and the community, but the nation at large. But that was not done. And it has escalated. I spent hours today watching Travis live, and I'm like, this country's on the verge of a civil unrest. And I was saying to my mom and sister that yes, it's Adriana, but I think Guyanese, this was the straw that broke the camel back, as we would say, because I think people are frustrated and they're angry. And there were times in I saw the police, they didn't have to be there, but they were there, and just their presence elicit negative emotions, and the crowd began to retaliate. Neibert, how do you think healing can take place for our nation at this
And
moment?
yeah. So Guyana is an interesting place. And it's one of the things that I've observed with Guyanese, and especially Guyanese leaders, is that Guyanese leaders do not respect the population, and that's sad. It's
Mhm.
extremely sad. That's one aspect that I've noticed. There's a lack of respect for the population from the leaders, and I'll give you one example of that away from this current situation. There was a talk between President Maduro and President Ali. They went to St. Vincent to talk about the border issue. And out of that agreement came the Argyle Agreement. And one of the things that happened the day after they concluded, the President Maduro had a statement up on his Facebook page saying this is what was discussed. This was what was in agreement. This we agreed on this point, bulleted points, and large bullets explaining what it is. And here is where we did not agree, right? And the agreement was signed by him and President Ali and by the I think the president of St. Vincent and Mr. Gonzalez, right? That was up on President Maduro's page. I went to President Maduro's page to see what happened. For days, and I don't even know when, if ever, it was updated to Guyanese by President Ali. And I remember saying to someone, I said, there's a disrespect towards the people of Guyana by the leaders of Guyana. And I said, what should have happened is exactly what President Maduro did. He respected his people enough. Whether you agree with him or not, that's not the question. We're not talking about the agreement, if he's right or, whatever. But he respected his people enough to say, yesterday, there was a discussion between myself and the president of Guyana, and it was brokered by this other person. And here is what we discussed, and here are the solutions or, things we agreed to and we did not agree with. Here it is. We never heard that from President Ali. And maybe he has done that afterwards. But I remember saying to some people that shows a level of disrespect towards Guyanese, and it shows you a respect towards Venezuelan people by their president. We're not talking about how he treats them. We're not talking about anything, but just that level of trying to communicate with your people, that was there. And the response that I got was, well, I looked at, if you wanted to know, basically, you could have looked at the live,
Wow.
right? Right. So Guyanese people are so trained by the disrespect that they don't even know that they should be afforded that level of respect of their leaders communicating with them in a respectful manner, saying, this is what is going on. There's like no transparency, right? And because there's no transparency, they think, Guyanese people think that that's normal, and it's not. So, that's a level of, you ask the question, where can we begin to heal? That is a place where we can start with transparency. So the police gave a wrong statement. They purposely tried to get or at least this is how it looks, right? This is exactly how it looks. They purposely tried to get the family away from that hotel. For what reason? We don't know. People are speculating. But what is the reason that you're trying to get the people away from the hotel? And this is from in the afternoon all the way all night. They're okay, you can leave and we will search for her or whatever. Or you talked about them seeing her at the bus stop. And I think that might have been, I'm not sure if that was the Wednesday or the Thursday morning that they saw her at the bus stop. But then they also saw her leaving in a car. Right? And obviously, those things were untrue. And because this young man is so connected with his daughter, he has such a connection in his family. He was like, my belly told me my daughter is there and I'm not leaving, right? Because he's not an absent father. He's a father that was connected to he's connected to his children, and obviously was connected to his daughter. So For Guyana to heal, first thing that needs to happen is transparency, right? Transparency. What happened and why did it happen? Right? Why was the police standing guard of this place when the family is looking for an 11-year-old? Why was the place not cordoned off? Why is it still not cordoned off right now? I see people going into this place and taking things. I wonder, they're removing evidence. They're removing critical items. Whoever is coming to do an investigation, things are gone. It's not cordoned off. The crime scene has not been cordoned off. And I don't understand that kind of activity. Why would the crime scene not be cordoned off? Why would it not be treated like a crime scene?
It's amazing that you raised that because immediately I remembered when I worked, when I ran a program and we had 175 rooms. And sometimes you lose track and someone dies in their room. When a person dies on the premises neighbor, the room is actually, it goes offline. There is the yellow tape. It becomes a crime scene until the autopsy is finished. And sometimes it takes 30 days for the NYPD to turn that room back to us. Even though it was natural death, this did not occur as you
At
clearly
all.
pointed out.
At all.
And the question is why?
Yeah. And that's a really great question. Why? Why not? If you see a young lady, obviously, okay, let's for argument's sake, let's say she drowned in that swimming pool. Why is it now, before the autopsy is done, that all the water is gone and a whole lot of stuff is in that pool? My question is, why did they burn the hotel? Why did they burn the residents? What was supposed to be unconfirmed reports said the residence of the owners of the hotel was burned. And this fire started at the same time while the other fire is going on, the fire at the hotel. I have no connection, but my question is, are you trying to get rid of evidence? What could be at the home that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to get rid of, right? And something I saw them saying, oh, the people burned down the place, right? And that immediately ticked me off because I'm like, nope. I looked at the video and the people did not burn down the place. It started on the second floor, and I decided that I'm going to look at that video and I'm going to take screenshots of the video to prove to people that it did not start with the people. And I saw people casually, as the crowd is there over her body, and they're going on casually on the second floor. There were multiple people just walking up and going in a room, standing, people standing. There were at least I counted. At least I can count like 7 people or up and down there. And in that particular video, you see people coming, and some of them go to the two of them specifically go to the back area. They didn't come to the front of the room. They walked, and then they walked around to the back where it's darkness. You can't see beyond that. But then you saw other people just standing there, people coming up and down the steps, and then this particular just person just standing, going over by the room, coming back, other people, and this is men and women. And you see, as they're standing there, you see the black smoke starting to come up from that room, right where they're guarding. I want to say guarding. And then it just came up. And then, as casually as they were standing and just walking around, as casually, each one of them left. So I want to know, why was that room set on fire? Why was something in that room set on fire so that the place started burning? So the people did not burn down that place. It was set internally.
I agree. I made the video because I took a walk the day, and I made a video and I said the protesters or the people did not start the fire. I didn't see the video. I just knew that. Um, and I was discussing it with someone, and someone said, I don't think there's, you know, whatever, and they don't have the maybe the know it all to set the fire. And I said, maybe they don't have the know it all, but someone told them to, because
Sorry, who doesn't have the know-it-all to set the
the
fire?
the the
And the
proprietors of the
Okay.
establishment, right?
Uh-huh. Got it.
And I said, well, if they don't, someone instructed them to, because someone else know that after the girl was found on the premises, there will be issues. There will be there must be an investigation. So I said all the evidence is burned up in smoke. However, I also said this is the in the age of this is 2025, in the age of artificial intelligence. Forensic has been improved and with technology. So if there is evidence there, if we can find a proper forensic team, the evidence will be uncovered. I went as far as to, because someone called me and said, Sharmin, I want to do something. What can I do? I said, well, reach out to forensic schools. See if you can get a team of students who are using technology, and let them come into Guyana. And then I was reminded of the Henry brothers, the Henry boys, when the forensic team entered the country, the difficulty they had. And I don't know when, I remember, I think it was Nigerian News that brought them in, and they were not able to conduct their investigation to come to a conclusion. So I was reminded of that, and I'm like, well, um, I didn't have an answer, because I did not remember, honestly, the Henry boys, Nigel Hughes bringing in a forensic team for the Henry boys.
And that's really a good and a key point, because I actually don't remember that too. And until now that you're saying it, it jogs my memory that happened. And I'm glad that the family has called for the FBI. And I wonder what made them not call for the Canadians, the Canadian whatever they call them. I was trying to see, what do they call them? The Mount.
The Royal something.
Yes, Royal Mountain, you know, something of Canada. Yeah, and I wondered what made them not call for them.
I want to, while you're looking for that, I want to go
Yeah.
back to something about disrespect. The leaders does not. disrespect the members of the society. And so many things went through my head while you were speaking about that. When you raised such an important point with Madura. But we can take it every day. When you have a prominent leader calling or labeling persons with as nicknames, what we would call nicknames, all kinds of names you call people, and they're comfortable doing that publicly on a press conference repeatedly. You cannot expect the nation, the citizens, to understand or even identify when they're being disrespected, because it has become a norm. It's normal that our men in high office, the VP, would sit every Thursday and call people slack buckter. That's like the popular thing that you hear. Um, and for me, what when I think of that, Neibert, I think of our next generation. How are they viewing each other? Do they understand the definition and the importance of respect when we have someone in high office who is modeling disrespect and it's acceptable?
It has to be acceptable because it's coming from the highest office, right? What would you do otherwise? Because the parents of a family set the tone for the family, right? So in a normal family, you wouldn't expect the children to set the tone for the parents. So in terms of that, because you know communities and nations come out of families, right? So if you have the father cursing out the children, calling the children names, disrespecting the children, then there's a culture of disrespect within that family. The children will disrespect the parents because sometimes that parent or that father will believe that the disrespect is only one way. What they fail to realize is that they're creating an atmosphere of disrespect that will come back to them, right? So sometimes when you look at families and you see children disrespecting parents, people look at those children and think how bad they are and, oh, how can you do that? But nobody was there when the parents were disrespecting the children, and they created that atmosphere of disrespect that the children are now old enough to respond to, right? So when you have a leader totally disrespecting his people, what do you expect to have the people do? They're going to totally disrespect each other because that's what they've learned. Because within the family, also, you will have sibling disrespecting sibling because that's the atmosphere that was created in that family and over that family. It's the same way with the nation. If you have disrespect from the top coming down, you will have disrespect uh, among the people of the nation. And one look at Facebook at how people talk to each other
Yes.
will demonstrate that to you. I mean, I have seen some of the vilest things being said and written on Facebook. Like I this is not a vile statement, right? Like others that I've seen. But literally somebody actually wrote about this Adriana. She died of natural causes. Somebody actually wrote a comment that said the girl died of natural causes. And I am like shocked, right? Because I don't understand how low we
Hmm.
can go. Because that nation is low. People, the activity in the people, the cultural interaction with each other is as low as you can go. Of course, of course, anything can go lower. But my gosh, can Guyana get any lower in the
I
interaction with one another? No, I mean, people cursing each other, everybody in Guyana, everybody it seems. I mean, that's an exaggeration, right? Because I've interacted with people who did not curse, but oh my gosh, every second word from every person curse words, and it's just like sailor, it's just going, and the vileness that's coming out. I've seen vile posts when they didn't find her yet. There was a vile post which I think was shared a lot, that she went somewhere to take, you know,
an 11
derogatory term, derogatory term, the disrespect, an 11-year-old. So there is no cultural awareness that we should be respectful to each other, right? So, and if there's no cultural awareness that we should be respectful to each other, it means there's no cultural awareness that I should be respectful to myself, because I cannot respect you if I don't respect me. I can't
Exactly.
love you if I don't love me.
Exactly.
So what you're seeing is a society that does not respect themselves, does not love themselves. And it's all the way, all throughout. You're seeing it from leadership all the way down. You're seeing it how people talk to each other, how they treat each other, how you gave the example of the vice president calling, you know, in a press conference, calling a derogatory name for somebody, and I don't know who this is or whatever. But yeah, if that's what's going on, then that's what the nation is catching. It's like, this is the parents, this is what we do, this is what we do. So this is what Guyana does. And you have to be so self-aware and so grounded in your own values to not be caught up in this, in that, because it's ridiculous. Even if you look at how people drive, it gives you it just gives you a an understanding of the lack of respect in the community, and that was on display with this young lady's demise. The police did not respect the family. They intentionally lied and kept on lying. And then, as they kept on lying, they even incriminated a young man
Yeah. Yeah.
and had him in jail for 12
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
Even after they found the body, and there was no way you can claim that this child left the building. Even after that, he was still kept in the lockups for many hours after that. So, what would have happened had the family left? What would have happened? Would they have taken her body out of that place, dumped it somewhere, and then frame that young man to
Mm-hmm.
say he was the person that did this? And then
Mm-hmm.
he would have spent how long in jail for a crime he did not commit,
Mm-hmm.
even as he claimed that he was telling them, I have alibis. I have people who know that I was nowhere near there. And as far as I heard from him and what he was saying, is that nobody listened to him. So my question is, what happens to him now that he has lost contracts? He lost that day's work. right? Then he said he lost a contract of $500,000 because nobody wants to associate with
Yep.
somebody whose name is associated with that. I say, what's the compensation for him? What's the reputational risk associated with his name now that his name was called and he was clearly not involved, right? So now you have all of these things going on. And who's the answer? Who is going to compensate him for losing a contract? Who is going to compensate him for that day that he raised? Who's going to compensate him for pain and suffering for being in a place that he should not have been in? You know? So are we just going to tell him, "Okay, you can go home now?" And then what? Suppose he has nightmares from being in there, and that's reasonable, right? The trauma in
Mm-hmm.
his own soul that he has to process.
Thank you, Neibert. Um, and now that you mentioned trauma, well, let's move into that. The societal trauma that is occurring. For me, this situation, this death of Adriana, has highlighted the level of trauma that and PTSD that the nation is living with, because there I would see videos. Our society has become so insensitive, and I'm saying because of social media, that when there is an accident and there is carnage, they're comfortable sharing that because trauma is normal. Not understanding that when you share that, the people that are viewing it is experiencing vicarious trauma. Here we have a society that is in fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode and is in dire need of an intervention. We're talking about Adriana. I am worried for Adriana's father because after the adrenaline dies down and he is frozen right now. I don't know if he'll ever get out of that response. I am not aware if the Ministry of Social Protection has offered support to the family, especially the siblings that were present. And we lost our sister, now she's dead. I am not sure what interventions are being done for the family and that community who stood vigil with them. And it's imperative for them to receive psychological, mental, and social support. The father needs, after the burial, I think someone needs to get him and his wife and maybe the children on a long retreat so that his nervous system could be regulated. Societally, there is a need for intervention because we are in constant trauma mode. Everything is traumatic and we are so comfortable with it. We need spiritual intervention. We need psychological intervention. We need mental intervention. We also need social intervention, we need political intervention. Where do we start? Someone was saying to me, this is not the Guyana that I know.
It's definitely not the Guyana you grew up in, you and I grew up in. It's not. As I am there, I see it as a very oppressive nation. It's extremely oppressive, and it gets more and more oppressive. And you can look at, as an example, and by the way, it's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Yes.
Royal Canadian Mounted Police. As I look at just the salaries for for the workers in Guyana, and I wonder, how is it that you survive? Because even recently, someone did an analysis with Trinidad, their cost of living versus Guyana's cost of living, and Guyana is higher in every category over Trinidad and Tobago. In Trinidad and Tobago, I don't think their money is as low in exchange to the US dollar as Guyana. But everything, and it's right there on Facebook. And all of this came up even at this traumatic moment. People are like questioning what is going on and why. So, somebody plays the cost of living in Guyana versus cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. We're comparing, and they compared stuff like gas and things like that, cooking gas, water, and I don't remember the other things. But Guyana is a society in crisis. It's in crisis, and I think some people are unwilling to see it, and I think other people, and I think most Guyanese don't see it because they live in it. And because they're living it, they've become accustomed to it. Like you said, they're accustomed to the trauma. So they actually think that trauma is normal, right? Um, as soon as if you pass and you kind of like, just touch somebody relative, they're on edge. Everybody's. I remember, I remember buying plantain chips from one of the vendors on the street, and I was buying it myself and for two other people. Uh, and I bought the plantain chips, and the vendor said, "Do you want sour?" And I'm like, "No," right? Because I didn't know about plantain chips and sour, right? And the vendor said to me, "Well, it's the same price." So I said, "Okay," right? I left with the plantain chips without the sour, and I was buying it for somebody who was, I think she was in her 40s, and then the next person was in their 80s. So I'm thinking, who wants plantain chip and sour, right? I get there, the person in the 80s said, "Where's the sour?" So I'm like, and the other person like, "Yeah, where's the sour?" And I'm like, "Oh, let me go back because I specifically told this vendor no sour." I said, "Let me go back and get the sour." So I went back to the vendor and I said, "You know what? People want sour." And I said, since they want sour, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm gonna taste this sour too. Since this 80-something-year-old wants sour, let me taste it too. So the vendor was like, "Okay." And then the vendor said to me, "Oh, you don't live here." So I said, "No." "How do you know that, or what do you think?" He said to me, "Yeah, because if it was Guyanese, would have been peer pressure." So me talking to him like normal was a shock. Was a shock for him because I
Mhm.
guess he expected me to go like whatever, blah blah blah. I don't know what he expected, right? But he clearly said, and I know I wasn't dressed in any different way or anything like that. But you didn't. He said because it would have been pressure, and I was like, wow, just yeah. But I see that. I see that in the society. It's a society that has extreme trauma. Soul, the soul in the society needs healing. People's soul, because people are accustomed to abuse and being abusive, right? So someone was telling me recently about seeing a woman literally beating a maybe 3 year old on the street, slapping this child upside the head. And that's the form of discipline, this corporal punishment way. And I'm not saying that children should not get lashes. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it should be a last resort, right? You should be talking to your children, setting an example for your children, not beating them upside the head so that they wouldn't learn violence, because that's what you're teaching them. This is how we solve problems: slap you upside the head, slap the other one upside the head. So instead of talking, so the language is not developed, right? The
Mhm.
dealing in the emotional realm is not developed. And so when they get to 13, 14, 18, 22, I'm upset with you, slap you, kill you, because I own you, you know, that way. It's not a society where children learn that they have a voice, they can speak, we can talk this out. And if I have told you on numerous occasions, if I have set boundaries for you on a few occasions, and you have pushed those boundaries, or you have walked through and blocked off or pushed off those boundaries, then you get the lashes to really understand the the severity of what you've done. Then there is no ease, there is no what can I say, well, this is a severity here, and then we can push to this boundary and no further. When daddy says no, he means no. When mommy says no, she means no. Okay, mom says don't do this, but can I talk to her and tell her why I think I want to do that, or something like that? The society is a society of yes or no because I say so, right? And I'm not just putting that on only Guyana, right? But I'm saying this is a way that we can start coming through and processing through, because it's a lot of emotional issues, right? We're emotionally immature. When you're emotionally immature, you don't know how to process your issues, your emotions. So when you feel angry, instead of identifying that you're angry, you lash out at the next person because that's what was done to you. So that's what you learn, that's what you do, and that's you think that's what solves the problem. But all you're doing is training the next generation to abuse other people because they have been abused, and to abuse their children. So you just keep passing that thing along. And so in that case, now you have politicians who are abusive and abuse their people all the time.
Well, let me tell you, now you said that, I remembered seeing a video where President Ali was in a community, and a young man, he couldn't be 20, more than 25, he could have been, but I'm just saying maybe 25 to 30, walked up and asked a question. And in a very abusive tone, not a nurturing tone, he was asked by the president of the country while it's being televised, "Do you have a house lock?" And the guy said no. He didn't ask a follow up question. Well, go go sit down. It's like he told him to shut up. And he said something else, but I did not look at the entire video because I found it very abusive, dismissive, and disrespectful to a young man. Because I'm saying, what if the young man grew up in a family where that wasn't taught, that when you're at this age and you can become independent and you can go find a land, and he was socialized like that? What if he wasn't? And you did not give him a chance to speak. You shut him down, embarrass him nationally and even internationally, and did not create or give him a solution. So the abuse is it's normalized in such a way that it's happening, and the perpetrator and the victim are not even aware that it's happening. We are in crisis.
Can I ask a question, just a follow-up question based on what you're saying? So, was the question asked towards the young man to basically say you can only ask a question if you have a house lot?
That was the that's the perception anyone would walk away with, the way it was done.
Okay. Okay. And that's what I was talking about when I talked about the disrespect, right? If you have respect for your people, it doesn't matter who it is. You would you would hear them out, right? And I'm not saying that you have all the time to entertain everybody, but you're not going to shut them down. You're not going to act like what they've said is not important, what what question they have is not valuable. You're not going to do that. So what I realize, and this can be, basically not only Guyana, but when you have immature leadership, and I'm talking about emotionally immature leadership, not, you can be AD and emotionally immature. Right? So it's not an age thing at all. You can be 80 and emotionally immature. And when you have immature leadership, people suffer, you know, people
Yes.
suffer. And that's within a family, within a school, within a community, within a nation.
But it's unacceptable
It is
because,
unacceptable.
especially for leaders, you cannot be emotionally immature. You cannot be emotionally ignorant, because now there are so many books, so many material and resources for you to increase your emotional intelligence. Um, and base the leadership 101, you meet people where they are. Now, for that was public humiliation. It's a sight that I remember. The guy was wearing a white shirt. I'll always remember that, and a gray pants, or a dark colored pants. um and the president was sitting. Now, if I don't know how that young man felt, but I know how I felt just
Watching
watching
it.
it, and how other young people would have felt from that their
If they were in
leader,
his shoes.
yeah,
If they were in his,
and
yeah.
the leader is treating them in such with such mediocrity. Um, they've they will lose their sense of self and value. On this same vein of trauma, I just have to touch on this. We have this ethnic polarization by our political parties that has been traumatic for decades. And for me now, it has become worse. While I was on Travis Live today, Monday, April 28th, I was
25. 20.
2025.
Yeah.
I was sick to my stomach to see the comments about black people and black man and the things some of them were saying about a child who has lost her life. And one of the things I always say to persons when we get to the US and we're filling up a form, I have never seen African, black or African American, I've never seen East Indian. And I've always wondered, what do they take if they take other? And I say that to say this, it is imperative for our political leaders to cease the ethnic polarization. It has become one of the most dangerous weapons for us Guyanese.
Against
And
us.
it has exploited the ethnic divisions among Afro Guyanese and Indo Guyanese. And it must stop. I don't know how we're going to have a national reconciliation. I don't know how we're going to stop. Burnham died how many decades ago? And you still have East Indians blaming Burnham for things that maybe would have done. And it's like they're on the revenge path, even after so many decades, to not right the wrong, but to um, e- equalize whatever they were feeling. I saw a maybe she was 18 years old, call Odessa Primus a gorilla. And I sent her a private message to ask her if she know how offensive that is and to call a black woman a gorilla. And I said, you're too young to have that kind of hate because it was not a race thing. It was just a whatever discussion. And she sent a message to me and told me to carry my old high S. Um, and I sent her a long message to tell her she's too young to open up her life to that kind of negative racial rhetoric because she was nasty. Um, and I also made reference that when we plant a seed, even though we are planting one seed, annually we reap a harvest. And she has planted a seed. And I hope that she's prepared for the harvest that she will be reaping. Because I don't think oftentimes, because of the trauma and our reactionary responses, no one gets to speak to a younger person like her. I utilized that opportunity. And I was waiting, I'm still waiting for her to respond. She didn't respond because I don't think she expected my response. She expected a reaction. And I
She
did not.
expected the She
The
expected the abuse and the
abuse.
disrespect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't go there with her. I
That's
took
not
it
who you
as a
are.
teaching. I took it as a teaching moment also, because you're not even a young adult, because you look like an 18 or 19-year-old, and you were fed and socialize in an environment where the ethnic polarization has caused you to be bitter, to call someone who can be your mom a gorilla, a black woman, and you think it's okay. It's time for us to heal. And Adriana's death has ignited the embers of the violence and political instability. It has nothing to do with politics, but everything that occurs becomes political and ethnic. And it's not something that we can shy away from. And I sometimes find myself saying it's time for us to not accept it anymore.
Yeah. And it's interesting of your narration there, because I did not see today, and you saw a lot of today, and you saw the negative comments. But I did see a lot of, I didn't do the lives. The I saw the videos that were live, that were originally live. So you still see the comments coming through. So from last week, and there were both ethnic groups and all the other ethnic groups chiming in about how horrible the situation is. So I'm wondering, what's the turn from last week to today?
Hmm. Hmm.
What happened between last week, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when people were compassionate, versus today? What
Mm-hmm.
happened? So that's something, that question to be answered, and something to be studied. Basically, what happened? Um, why would people be so, on vitriol today against this death of this young lady who clearly has both of those ethnicities flowing through her veins? Because she was clear, her
Mm-hmm.
father is clearly mixed, you know, and her mother, it looks as though she's mixed a little bit, not as much as the father, but this child is clearly mixed with both. You saw the cousins on the dad side Indian, right? And you saw a community there that had both
Mix, yes.
mixed. So has the vitriol on Monday been such, where you can hear that, and it's so insidious, basically, that
Mm-hmm.
you can look at me, that has two eyes just like you, one nose just like you, lips just like you, two ears just like you, and think that I'm other than
A
a
human
person
being.
just like you, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of idiocy has to stop, right? It's foolishness to the core, right? Even if you're not Indian, like East Indian, from where your ancestors were from India, and you are somewhere else, your melanin is not as dark. And some of the people that would want to call me something, their melanin is way darker than mine. I mean, everything about them is darker than mine, right? But then they would call me, you know, it's foolishness to the highest extent, right? And but it's exploitative, because you can get people emotionally riled up in that way. It's a way of having people think that they're better than somebody
Mm-hmm.
else. I At least I am not this, you know All of us can't eat because we're being underpaid, but at least I am not that, right? So this is why politicians get away with what they get away with, because they feed, well, you're not that. It's the classic situation that has happened in America, right? Before there was white, right? Because remember, a few centuries ago, there were no white people. They had that they developed the construct of white people so as to get the poor white people on their side, to let them know that they're better than these people who are deeper in melanin. Um, but in Guyana, we all have the same melanin, and some and some of you are darker. Not only that, you will hear some, like I recently heard the businessman, I don't remember his name, but he had an interview with Travis Chase. He was a businessman from and a doctor from New York, and there was some land issue with him in Guyana, and he went and he had that interview with Travis Chase on that. And in that interview, as an Indian man, he talked about being black in America, right? He admitted that he was black in America. And I
Mhm.
remember too in 2020, when all of the, issues were going on with George Floyd and so on, there was an Indian from Guyana in upstate New York, I think it was. I think it was upstate New York that got in trouble with the police. And all they described him was as a black man. This black man, they didn't consider him in Indian or Indo-Guyanese or whatever. They considered him black, period. So here, it amazes me, especially those who live here or have
Mhm.
lived here in America, right? Who who say things like black man, because that's what you were called, and that's what you are called every day. And it is it and the thing that I say to Guyanese and my Guyanese friends, when you look at the landmass of Guyana and you look at the amount of people that live in Guyana and the amount of Guyanese that are all over the nation, all over the world, if you took us all back and put us in Guyana, we still do not have enough people to develop Guyana. So why fight against our people? Right? You're literally fighting against yourself. And as you fight against yourself, you have an open door for other people who are not concerned that you're Indian or you're black. They just see you as Guyanese and they see you as beneath them, all Guyanese. So you have a situation where we can come in and rob, kill, steal, and whatever, because these over here fighting amongst
Among
themselves.
themselves.
Right.
And we see that happening right now.
Correct.
You
Correct.
know?
So they don't have, we don't, there are no guardrails to guard the things that we have been gifted with. So other people can come, take what they want and go, because these here fighting against each other. We don't have enough people to develop Guyana. So why fight and why try to marginalize, especially you're trying to marginalize the people who are qualified. You're trying to marginalize the people that are educated, right? You're trying to marginalize the people that can help you and put the society forward. Why? Because they do not have your ethnicity. For what reason? Do you think other people coming in to respect your ethnicity? No, they're coming in to tell you that they're above you and they're greater than you and that you should bow to them. And if Guyana is not careful, a lot of people from other places will have Guyanese bow to them in Guyana, not outside of Guyana, you know. But that's, they cannot, because the house divided against itself cannot
Cannot
stand,
stand. Amen.
right? So if Guyanese are divided against themselves, they're just bringing the country down. And we can see it as we, you and I agreed, the years that we grew up there, you know, the streets are the same, the houses are the same, but the people are definitely not the same. They're disrespectful towards each other. And, that story that you brought up as to go away from here if you don't have a house lot, that's the thing that we're talking about, the disrespect, right?
Mhm.
So you're disrespectful to your children, and then you expect those children to respect you. It's not going to happen, because you've created the atmosphere and you've nurtured them in a certain way. You've nurtured them to be disrespectful to you, to the police, to to everybody else. So if the police says to a Guyanese person that they should walk here, that person is not a walker because you created an atmosphere where these people can't be trusted.
Mhm.
And then the police also, because they know everything is disrespect, they're disrespectful to the people. To the people disrespectful to them. It's a it's all kinds of things, in terms of, but the healing of the, you talked about the, healing in emotions, physically, psychologically, spiritually, all of that. And Guyana needs a revolution. you
Mhm.
know Guyana definitely needs a revolution, because the spirit realm leads. And there's, as I perceive it, there's a battle in the spirit realm in Guyana.
There is. I was telling someone I was there in 2020, and I remember there was this thick, dark cloud. And the best way I can describe it, it was not like overshadow, it was not like overcast. There was a thick, dark cloud over Guyana. And I called someone, of course, who's a minister, and I said, "Do you see that cloud?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do." Um, and so there is this heavy darkness over the nation
And I wonder why.
because, well, that's for another episode that we need to discuss. But there is a heavy cloud, that there is a cloud of darkness over Guyana. But at this time, it is important for mental health and psychological support in every community, especially in the schools where Adriana attended, and also in the community. And there are researches that showed that when the community come together, there is healing. And I have seen the community come together for Adriana. And I want to encourage every community, because every community is affected by this, despite race or ethnicity. Come together, have, maybe the church need to step in now, provide space for the community to vent, because people need, all that we're seeing right now is pent up anger and trauma, old trauma, past trauma that has become complex. And if we provide spaces for our men and women to vent, to talk. Back in the days, we didn't have social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists. We had the standpipe where everyone met and they discuss whatever is happening in the community. We need to go back to those days, because Guyana does not have the mental health and the psychological structure to provide support for all the complex traumas, PTSD, that the citizens are facing and experiencing. So having those little groups in each community can be a source of support right now. Um, our suicide, we don't, before we knew about the suicide numbers, wherever there is complex trauma, there is a high suicide rate. We need suicide prevention in every community, especially now where persons are emotionally charged. Their nervous systems are activated and people are in fight flight mode. It's important for us to provide support. And we cannot look to the government to provide that support. We can provide that support within our communities. We can go to the church and say, you are in our community, we need space, right? We can go to business establishments and ask for space once a week so that we can meet and just talk about what's happening with us and not take it to social media. I'm seeing so many young women who have lost their way, and the level of lawlessness and
Young men too.
oh god, yeah.
I wanted to piggyback on when you spoke a little bit about Adriana's father. I have a little slightly different perspective in terms of him. And only because I'm seeing him emote, which I think is a good thing. If he were not emoting, if he were holding it in, I would have so much more concern. And I mean, of course, he's going to need all the support, but he's actually expressing,
Mm-hmm.
he's pulling that grief out. So I feel good, on one level for that. Because a lot of men, you would see more of a woman crying or
Mm-hmm.
something, and men feel I shouldn't cry. I can't break down. Like I saw him just collapse today. Men would be like, oh no, I can't because I have to keep this image of the strong, stoic person. So I'm glad that he's expressing that and letting that show. He's demonstrating to the nation and to men. You don't have to be strong, you can feel. And you can process your emotions. You can let it out and let it go. And the comments that I've seen on his pictures, like a lot of people commenting, oh my gosh, I feel it for you. I feel, and this is men and women commenting, I feel it, and I too, right? I see it and I feel, I look at him and tears are coming down my eyes, right? So he's actually helping the nation to process a little bit of our emotions because like I think other deaths and other people who have been murdered, like you named the Henry boys before, I'm not sure that the entire nation was able to process it, and not just in the nation, but outside of the nation. Because you've seen that they had vigils in New York. There's a vigil coming up. My cousin said there's going to be a vigil in London. I
Mm-hmm.
think Canada too, and then I saw, and we started off talking about how, a lot of people, right? It's I've seen a Trinidadian woman, two Trinidadian women making videos on it. And one of them expressly said, I've never been to Guyana, right? I've seen a Jamaican guy make a video on it. Um, and people from Barbados make videos. So it's not Guyana. And this is what the leaders of Guyana should understand. So when you are threatening the people, you are telling the world who you are. You're telling the
Mm-hmm.
world how you consider your people. You're telling the world what you think about your people, right? And other leaders should know, even the people who are in the opposition or anything like that, that this is the stage. It's new. You have to grow. You have to sure. You have to treat your people differently. Um, you know, there, there there's no longer, you cannot have a strong man attitude in leadership generally, and especially in political arenas. You can't. I mean, we're seeing we're seeing that kind of leadership on a global stage now. But does it really last? Does it really benefit the you what you're doing is provide a revolt under you. There's a principle that I've learned when leadership does not change, when change is necessary and it does not come by way of leadership on the top, it will come from the bottom by way of revolution. So Guyana needs change. There should be change. It's begging for change. It's pregnant for change right now. And how you respond will be, you'll be judged, I guess.
We have to do this again because there is so much for us to unpack. And as I was telling someone that Adrianna Younge was a beautiful soul because look what she has, her death has produced. It has produced a nation that is demanding answers. It has produced unity that Guyana has not seen in decades, despite of the couple of people who want to inject dissent. It has caused the world to look at Guyana differently. And it is such a beautiful thing. And it says what kind of spirit this young woman had. And I believe that whatever her purpose was for her to live out, despite it was taken away in her death, it was fulfilled because she has, her name will forever be in the mouths of persons in Guyana and around the world. Um, my condolences to the family, my condolences to Guyana, my condolences to the people around the world who are mourning with us. I saw someone from St. Vincent dedicated a kite to her. And so that's my closing remarks. What would be yours?
My closing remarks would be, I love what you said, but I really want to emphasize the love of the parents. I'm moved by their love one for another, and their love for their children. To me, it's palpable that man's love for his wife and her love for him, and that love translated to their children. I want to see more of that. And obviously, they respected their daughter, and she was wanted. She was wanted and loved, and that comes true. It just comes true. And that kind of love is what is needed in Guyana. So, in a way, I would hope that somehow God would use that love to just pour over the nation. You know, you said it perfectly. Her her life was cut short, I think, by evil, but the good that is coming through and the potential to come through into the nation will not be stopped. Her
Mm-hmm.
name indeed will be remembered. And of course, condolences to her family, condolences to her community. And you said something that was really important. You talked about the children in her school and in her classroom. That really needs to address. We can't ignore them also, because those children are suffering and will suffer because of this tragic and heinous crime that was done towards her. But blessings to that family, and may the Lord hold them up, and may He bring the change that this whole situation is pregnant with to the nation of Guyana.
Thank you.